Game 82 is in the books, and in full 15-game night in the NBA, the regular season is over. For our tanking teams fans, we want to say finally, and to the playoff teams, good luck.
Oh, man, it is definitely a relief for some of those fan bases, that's for sure.
Seriously. Imagine your team's entire decade-long future relies not on your own star players, but on, like, a backup point guard playing 2,000 miles away in an entirely different time zone. That is the sheer lunacy we are dealing with today.
It's completely wild.
Right. So for you, the listener, consider this deep dive your ultimate shortcut to navigating the chaotic, invisible threads of the final day of the season. We are tracing the domino effect of these last 15 games.
Yeah, we'll uncover how a calculated decision to play exactly one half of basketball shifted the Western Conference.
And why a team of minor league backups totally dismantled a fully loaded playoff contender, plus how the financial nightmare of paying 3 head coaches at once is just exposing a franchise in absolute freefall.
By the end of this deep dive, you are going to be the smartest casual NBA fan in the room. It really is the most wonderful and chaotic time of the year.
Oh, 100%.
With all 30 teams playing on the exact same day, you have this staggering collision of motivations. Some teams are fighting for their playoff lives, some are actively trying to lose to improve their draft position, and others are just trying to thread a very specific mathematical needle.
Okay, let's unpack this. Specifically that mathematical needle out west where the heavyweight picture finally locked into place.
Right, the West is set.
Yeah, the Denver Nuggets secured the 3rd seed with a 128-118 win over the San Antonio Spurs. Now, the Nuggets dropped 128 points, but the headline here is Nikola Jokic.
It always is, yeah.
He only played the first half. He stepped off the floor having hit exactly the 65-game minimum the league now requires for a player to be eligible for MVP consideration, and then he just grabbed the seat.
Just punched his clock and sat down.
Exactly. And I have to push back on this as a strategy. I mean, I hear the arguments for rest, but there is a physical reality of rust, right?
Sure, absolutely.
You cannot simulate playoff intensity in a practice gym. Doesn't resting your MVP right before a highly physical first-round series against the Minnesota Timberwolves risk a massive Game 1 letdown?
I see where you're coming from.
Aren't they inviting a broken rhythm just to satisfy a league-mandated quota?
Well, that is a completely valid concern for about 28 other teams in the league. For a typical roster, pulling your engine out of the car halfway through the final tune-up race is asking for a stalled engine in the playoffs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Denver is the exception, and it comes down to the mechanics of their offense. Their continuity is what makes this work. Jokic and Jamal Murray have years of deep, ingrained chemistry.
Especially in that two-man pick-and-roll game.
Exactly. They don't have to look at each other to know where the other is cutting. They just read the defense's hips and react simultaneously. They can run their offense in their sleep at this point.
So you are arguing that the rust factor is essentially negated by the sheer amount of miles they have already driven together.
Pretty much, yeah.
They aren't trying to find their rhythm. They're just protecting the physical condition of the engine.
Precisely. You have to remember, the Timberwolves are built specifically to batter Jokic physically. They have immense size.
Oh, they're huge.
Right. So for Denver, keeping Jokic fresh for that physical toll is a calculated preservation of their most vital asset. Pulling him the second he hits that 65-game milestone is actually brilliant asset management.
Wow, okay.
They don't need the reps. They already have a baked-in DNA that allows them to prioritize health over an extra 20 minutes of meaningless regular season basketball.
That baked-in DNA concept is actually the perfect lens for looking at what happened in the Eastern Conference.
Oh man, the East was a mess today.
A total mess, because we just watched a team completely unravel precisely because they lack that ingrained system. I am talking about the Orlando Magic's catastrophic loss.
Yeah, that was brutal.
This was the absolute shocker of Game 82. The Magic had their full starting lineup out there. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs.
Everyone was playing.
Everyone. They are playing for a guaranteed playoff spot to avoid the play-in tournament, which, just to clarify for the casual fan, is that brutal sudden death bracket for the 7th through 10th seeds to earn the final playoff spots.
Right. Nobody wants to be in the play-in if they can avoid it.
Exactly. All Orlando has to do is beat the Boston Celtics. But Boston rested their top 7 or 8 players. No Jason Tatum, no Jaylen Brown, no Derek White.
They basically just brought up the main Celtics.
Yeah. Boston essentially rolled out a G League roster, meaning guys who spend most of their time in the developmental minor leagues.
And despite facing a lineup of third stringers, Orlando lost 113 to 108.
It is totally baffling on paper. Orlando facing Boston's backups was like studying all night for an open book test, being handed the answer key by the teacher and still failing.
That is a harsh but incredibly accurate way to put it.
Banchero struggled massively. He shot 7 for 22 from the floor and had 6 turnovers. Orlando completely let go of the rope in a devastating third quarter where they got outscored 42-20.
42-20.
Yeah, and they took a very uncharacteristic 43 three-pointers and turned the ball over 19 times. And the heroes for Boston, Baylor Shireman drops 30 points, Ron Harper Jr. drops 27,
Unbelievable.
and Luka Garza puts up 27 points, 12 rebounds, and hits a wild game-winning 3.
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of that collapse and what it reveals about the underlying infrastructure of both organizations. You use the open book test analogy, but I look at it like a synchronized rowing team.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, it perfectly highlights the difference between institutional trust and raw talent. Championship cultures, like Boston's, win regardless of the individual personnel on the floor because their system dictates the spacing and the ball movement.
So it's plug and play.
Exactly. It is institutional. Players don't have to think. They only have to react. When a player like Shireman or Garza steps onto the floor, they run the exact same drive and kick offensive principles that Tatum and Brown run.
Which means the ball moves faster than the defense can rotate, regardless of who is passing it.
Exactly. On the flip side, Orlando revealed a fatal lack of offensive trust and identity. When the pressure ramped up in that third quarter, the Magic panicked.
You could see it on their faces.
Oh, absolutely. When you don't trust a deeply rooted system, you have to consciously think about your next move. Thinking slows down your reaction time in the NBA.
And that split-second delay is what leads to 19 turnovers.
Bingo. Instead of leveraging their size advantage and driving to the rim, they abandoned their identity, jacked up 33 threes, and tried to let raw talent bail them out.
And it completely backfired.
In the NBA, isolated raw talent crumbles against a connected system, even a system run by third stringers.
And because of that total system failure, Orlando falls all the way to the 8th seed and now has to travel to Philadelphia to face the 76ers in that high-stress play-in environment.
Which is going to be a nightmare matchup for them.
Oh, for sure. But, Orlando's disaster became the ultimate gift for the Toronto Raptors. Because the Magic stumbled so spectacularly, the Raptors capitalized.
They definitely took advantage.
Toronto blew out a tanking Brooklyn Nets team 136-101. Scottie Barnes was brilliant, securing yet another triple-double with 18 points, 12 rebounds, and 12 assists.
He's having an incredible season.
He really is, looking like a lock for an All-NBA selection. And RJ Barrett chipped in 26 points as well. Because of all this, Toronto sneaks up to secure the 5th seed.
Yeah, that was a huge jump for them on the final day.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I look at this Toronto team, and I construct this theory that they just picked up the baton that Orlando dropped.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Are the Raptors actually a legitimate playoff threat? Or did they just get incredibly lucky by capitalizing on a historic meltdown on the final day?
It is tempting to dismiss them as lucky beneficiaries, for sure. But doing so ignores the mechanical matchup problem they present to their first-round opponent, the 4th-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers.
Right, because Cleveland is a totally different beast.
Yeah, on paper, Toronto is the underdog. Cleveland has a high-powered, highly orchestrated offense driven by Donovan Mitchell and James Harden.
Right.
They need clean passing lanes and a rhythmic flow to generate points. They want to play fast and clean.
They want to track meet.
Precisely. And Toronto's designed to throw mud on the track.
I love that analogy.
Toronto might not have the pure offensive firepower of Cleveland, but their physical, highly versatile, defensive-minded approach makes them incredibly dangerous. Their roster is built on extreme length.
Yeah, they have arms everywhere.
Exactly. And they use that wingspan to actively disrupt the pocket passes and driving lanes that Mitchell relies on. They switch everything defensively, which forces Cleveland out of their orchestrated sets and into muddy isolation basketball.
So they drag you down into the swamp with them.
In a 7-game series, a team that can completely disrupt your offensive geometry with sheer physicality is a nightmare. Even if they backed into their seed on the final day, they are unpredictable, and unpredictability breeds upsets.
So Toronto uses their physicality to embrace the mud. But then we look at the Atlanta Hawks, who essentially looked at the standings, saw the mud approaching, and just politely declined to participate.
Yeah, they wanted no part of that.
Not at all. While Orlando was frantic and Toronto was opportunistic, Atlanta displayed this calculated apathy. They rested 9 of their top 10 players and took a 143-117 beating from the Miami Heat.
It was a blowout.
Defensively, it was a layup line. They allowed 80 points in the paint, but offensively, they still looked somewhat structured, racking up 31 assists.
Which is bizarre, but
Yeah, they basically accepted the 6th seed. Why? Because their team analysts genuinely believed there was no meaningful difference in difficulty between facing the Cleveland Cavaliers or the New York Knicks in the first round.
the math told them it didn't matter.
Exactly. I look at this strategy like a savvy gambler folding a decent hand at the poker table. They know their chips are better saved for the next round. Why risk your stack when the math tells you the odds don't change either way?
The poker analogy holds up because it is fundamentally about risk management. For Atlanta, prioritizing health over an optical victory was the true win.
Right.
If you play your starters to hunt for the 5th seed, you risk an ankle sprain or a knee injury in a game that doesn't actually alter your championship probability.
Which would be catastrophic right before the playoff.
Exactly. By resting 9 of their top 10 rotation guys, they guarantee that their core is completely rested, avoiding the physical toll of the play-in tournament entirely.
So it's actually a sign of confidence.
This shows a quiet internal confidence as they prepare to face the Knicks, yeah? They're signaling that they believe their peak performance can beat anyone, so the only variable that matters is ensuring they actually reach that peak physical state for Game 1.
Now, unfortunately, rest and health are luxuries that some teams just cannot afford no matter how much they manipulate the standings.
That is very true.
Let's move from these strategic chess moves to the bitter, expensive reality of a failed season, starting with a massive coaching casualty.
Oh boy, here we go.
The Milwaukee Bucks wrapped up a miserable 32-50 season with a 126-106 loss to the 76ers. And the massive news breaking right after the buzzer, Shams Charania reported Doc Rivers is departing as head coach.
Wow.
He finishes his tenure in Milwaukee with a 97-103 record across 3 seasons. And the financial reality here is staggering.
It's hard to even wrap your head around.
Bucks are now on the hook to pay out his 8-figure salary for the 2026-27 season. Because they are also still paying former coach Adrian Griffin, that means the Bucks will technically be paying 3 different head coaches next year.
It is an absolute financial and cultural disaster.
It really is. The situation with Giannis Antetokounmpo is being described as toxic. His future is highly unclear due to both his own health issues and the severe limitations of this aging roster, which just ranked an abysmal 27th in defense.
27th is just unacceptable for a team with championship aspirations.
I mean, the only actual silver lining to this entire season is that A.J. Green made franchise history, hitting 232 three-pointers for the season on 42% shooting. That breaks Ray Allen's legendary 2001-2002 franchise record.
Which is an incredible individual achievement for sure.
It is. So what does this all mean? It feels to me like Milwaukee is trapped in a sunk cost fallacy. You know, that psychological trap where you keep pouring resources into a failing project just because you've already invested so much?
Oh, absolutely.
Is firing Doc Rivers just treating the symptom while completely ignoring the disease of a roster that has simply aged out of contention?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Bucks are at one of the most critical franchise junctures in modern NBA history. The sunk cost fallacy is the exact diagnostic term for what is happening in Milwaukee. When a front office is paying 3 head coaches simultaneously, it isn't a sign of demanding excellence.
No, it screams of panic.
It screams of panic and a total lack of a unified long-term vision. Firing Rivers is absolutely treating the symptom. You mentioned they ranked 27th in defense.
Right.
That kind of defensive collapse isn't just about a coach calling the wrong defensive scheme. A new scheme doesn't make a 34-year-old player run faster or close out on shooters quicker.
Right. It is a mechanical failure of the personnel.
Precisely. It is an aging roster that simply cannot move the way they used to, combined with a total lack of developmental young talent to infuse energy.
And they're kind of stuck, right?
And here is the fatal flaw. They don't have the draft capital, meaning they don't have future first-round draft picks to trade away, or the financial flexibility to easily execute a roster teardown.
So they can't even rebuild if they wanted to.
Fixing this fractured relationship with Giannis is going to require far more than just putting a new, expensive voice on the sideline. It requires a viable path to contention, and Milwaukee has completely mortgaged their future to prop up a present that is already crumbling.
That bleak, panicked reality in Milwaukee provides such a sharp contrast in coaching philosophies to what is happening out west. We just saw a 32-win team fire their coach in a desperate frenzy, but over in Sacramento, a 22-win team is keeping theirs.
It's a completely different approach.
The Sacramento Kings finished the season 22-60. They lost their finale 122-110 to Portland. They ranked 26th in offense and 28th in defense.
Ugly numbers.
By all traditional metrics, the season was a disaster. Yet league sources, including Sam Amick, have confirmed that head coach Doug Christie has been given a reprieve and will return next season.
Which surprised a lot of people.
Now, I want to ask you, the listener, to put yourself in the shoes of a general manager right now, or even just think about your own workplace. Do you prioritize the brutal, cold math of a failed project? Or do you prioritize the human element?
That's the million-dollar question.
Is it better to have a highly qualified boss who ruins the culture and morale, or a leader who might lack immediate results but makes every young employee actively want to come to work and fight for them? Because the reasoning coming out of Sacramento is really compelling. Christie never lost the locker room.
This raises an important question about how we define success for a rebuilding franchise. That workplace morale analogy gets to the absolute core of the issue.
Yeah.
When you do not have the foundational talent to compete for a title, your win-loss record is largely irrelevant. Development is the only metric of success that actually matters.
So you are looking completely past the 22 wins and focusing purely on the individual mechanical growth of the youth.
Exactly. You look at what happened down the stretch under Christie. The team played with genuine joy.
You could see it on the court.
You look at the growth of Nate Clifford, dropping back-to-back 20-point games, Max Reno putting up 21 points and 9 rebounds, the emergence of an undrafted gem like Dylan Cardwell.
Right, these guys took massive leaps.
The Kings front office looked at the internal growth of these young players and realized that firing the coach disrupts that psychological and mechanical trajectory.
Because they'd have to learn a whole new system under a new guy.
Exactly. Replacing Christie with a rigid, fix-it veteran coach might squeeze out 5 more wins next year, but it might alienate the 21-year-old prospects who are thriving in a supportive environment.
Plus, Christie has those deep ties to the city.
Furthermore, Christie has a deep personal desire to win a banner, specifically for Sacramento. It provides a cultural anchor. Continuity and patience are often far more valuable for a young roster than a revolving door of leadership. Sacramento is choosing long-term cultural stability over short-term optical fixes.
Speaking of rebuilding teams, that concept of patience ties directly into the currency of teams looking to the future. I'm talking about the draft lottery.
Oh yes, the ping pong balls.
Let's tie the end of the regular season back to the fans, whose only hope right now is the draft lottery. The Chicago Bulls ended their season with a loss to the Dallas Mavericks, and that got them the 9th seed in the lottery standings.
Which isn't ideal, but there's a twist.
There's a massive twist. Bulls fans actually have a huge, highly specific reason to be glued to the Western Conference play-in tournament this week. And it all revolves around the Portland Trail Blazers.
The interconnectedness of the NBA draft economy is always fascinating, and this is a perfect example of how complex asset management has become.
It is wild. Portland finished in 8th place out west, which means they are playing for the play-in against the Phoenix Suns. Because of the specific protections on a previous trade, if Portland wins that game and successfully makes the playoffs, the Chicago Bulls get Portland's first-round draft pick this year.
Another draft pick for the Bulls.
It is the strange reality of NBA fandom where right now millions of people in Chicago are suddenly the biggest Portland Trail Blazers fans on the planet.
Buying the jerseys and everything.
They don't even care about their own team's performance anymore. They are out there analyzing Portland's pick-and-roll defense against the Suns, just hoping a team playing 2,000 miles away nets them a crucial extra lottery pick.
It perfectly illustrates how no franchise exists in a vacuum. One single playing game out west, a missed defensive rotation by the Suns, or a hot shooting night from a Portland role player, can drastically alter the influx of young talent.
It could change the next decade for Chicago.
Yeah, it alters the entire rebuilding timeline of a completely different franchise on the other side of the country in the Eastern Conference. That is the beauty and the sheer cruelty of the league's asset management.
It really is. The dominoes just keep falling long after Game 82 ends.
As we step back and look at this entire chaotic landscape, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on.
Lay it on us.
We are watching Milwaukee cycle through their third coach in a desperate, panicked bid to win immediately, creating a high-stress environment that is alienating their star. At the exact same time, we're watching Sacramento practice extreme patience with a 22-win season to nurture a joyful culture for their developing talent.
To total contrast.
We have to wonder, is the traditional NBA coaching carousel actually broken? Will a superstar like Giannis Antetokounmpo look at these patient, development-focused teams out there, see the stability and continuity they are building, and realize that the grass might actually be greener outside of a win-now pressure cooker?
Thank you for listening. Please comment, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Spotify, please leave 5-star review. It will help the channel grow. Until next time, please check our previous episodes.